Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Deborah Richardson, and I'm honored to be the Executive Director of ACLU of Colorado. With me today is our new Legal Director, Tim Macdonald. Tim, welcome, and please introduce yourself to our participants.
Good morning, or I guess good noon, Deborah and everyone. My name's Tim Macdonald. I am the new Legal Director of the ACLU of Colorado. Just a little bit about me. I grew up in Manhattan, Kansas. I went to law school at the University of Michigan, where I also got a master's in public policy. After law school, I worked in South Africa for a human rights group for a period on land reform, did a clerkship on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Antonio, Texas. Spent 25 years with the law firm of Arnold & Porter, and now I am just thrilled, delighted, and honored to be the legal director for the ACLU of Colorado as of, I guess now going on 2 months.
Well, Tim, you certainly has not been a stranger to us. Will you talk a little bit about your engagement before you became the legal director?
Yeah, absolutely, Deborah. So I really came to the ACLU for the first time as a baby lawyer more than 25 years ago. And I worked on a reproductive rights case, a challenge to an abortion restriction that Colorado had passed. And I knew then that the ACLU nationally and ACLU of Colorado was doing some of the most important work in our state and across our country. And so I tried to do a lot of ACLU work over the next 25 years. I did a number of cases during that time. And in many ways, my career culminated in the case we did on behalf of a collection of George Floyd protesters after the murder of George Floyd that I did as cooperating counsel with the ACLU. And it was a case and clients that frankly changed the trajectory of my life. They were incredibly brave folks out there protesting police violence on the streets of Denver. And of course, people around the country were doing the same. And here in Denver, they were met with police violence and overwhelming and excessive unconstitutional force. And I would say that case made me realize I needed to do this kind of work every day. And that's what led me here to be the legal director. And I want to share with folks some of the pictures of our clients and what they experienced. Before I do that, I just want to give a trigger warning for people out there, because the pictures are disturbing. And because what happened to the citizens protesting police violence was disturbing. And I think it's important to stand in community with those folks. So I'd just like to share that with people, because the pictures are both haunting and impactful, and frankly, a call to action. They were a call to action, certainly for me and for people across the country. So I'm going to do that now if the technology works, so we'll cross our fingers.
And Tim, I really appreciate you having these photos and showing us the reality of what these protesters experience and the importance of the work that we continue to do to represent those who are victims of oppression and suppression by our systems that are there to protect us. So thank you for the being brave to show these photos. And I think our audience will really understand your passion and commitment for this work and the successful outcome that you had. So thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. All right, we'll share my screen. All right, Deborah, can you see that on the screen?
I can, thank you.
Okay, so I think probably everyone on our call knows what happened. George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, and people around the country and around the world came out in community and solidarity to protest that violence and that murder. And so in Colorado, this is an overhead picture from a helicopter camera of people convening on our state capitol on May 28th, 2020. And what the folks were met with were these weapons that were used by our police force. So it included pepperball launchers and shotguns and chemical sprays and flashbang grenades. And these were the devices that our police deployed on our citizens. This is a picture of one of our clients, Dr. Stanford Smith, who was pepper sprayed while he had his hands raised, trying to keep peace among the protesters. An officer walked up and, without provocation or warning, launched a chemical spray in Dr. Smith's face. And these images were published in newspapers around the country, and they're graphic and disturbing. Dr. Smith, who testified at trial, said this was the first protest he'd ever been to, and he was motivated by what he described as a rainbow coalition of people out there marching and chanting in solidarity. And what he received was a disturbing use of force, as demonstrated in these pictures. But in many ways, this picture, I love it because it shows the resilience and the grit that Dr. Smith showed at that time, sort of arms raised in both protest and pain. It's a powerful sign of resistance, and he's a wonderful, brave, I guess now not even a young man, a man who's graduated dental school, has got a wonderful dental practice himself now. This is a picture of another one of our clients, Zach Packard. And I've just got a couple pictures here. These are particularly disturbing because Zach was shot in the head by a Kevlar bullet from a shotgun at about 20 paces, fractured his skull. But Zach survived and was a brave warrior for justice, is a brave warrior for justice. A professional photographer happened to be standing just feet away and captured these photographs as Zach was shot by the police. This is a picture of him at the hospital and then after the hospital. And Zach testified at the trial and really gave voice to the protest and the movement for a more just society. These are pictures of two more of our clients, Maya Rothline and Amanda Blasingame, who are protesting with their hands up. This is right beside the Capitol, moments before they were tear gassed. Amanda and Maya were also subject to an actual drive-by shooting by the police at their own apartment, a drive-by shooting that seemed unbelievable, but ultimately was confirmed by individual officers who testified that they were ordered to shoot people on their own front steps around Denver. This is a picture on Colfax, right beside a Wendy's, of the police deploying flashbang grenades that give off this incendiary device. Again, you see people with their arms raised being flashbang grenaded while protesting. So another picture of one of our clients, Elizabeth Epps, who was shot in the face, was shot in the back with pepper bullets and with rubber bullets, and yet came back time and again to the Capitol to raise her voice on behalf of George Floyd and the many Black and brown people who've been the subject of police violence. This is a picture of the police shooting at citizens from the Capitol, which was a pretty remarkable video that we showed at trial. And this is, I think, one of the last of our plaintiffs, Hollis Lyman, who is shown kneeling with a sign with the names of people subject to police violence on her knees. Here's her standing at the corner of Broadway and Colfax. She was pepper sprayed, she was shot, and here's a picture of the sign that she was holding with a bullet hole from the police, shot through the name of Philando Castile, another young man who was shot by police officers. And there was something both tragic and poetic about this. And I shared these photos with you in large part because of the impact they've had on both me personally, but our entire community and the work we do. The folks who came out to protest police violence in the summer of 2020 were calling for change. It's the kind of change that the ACLU of Colorado is calling for, and it's certainly one of the reasons that I'm here today as the legal director.
You were the lead on this case, and you put together an incredible team. Will you talk about how you pulled that together and the work that took into just determining the case, the strategies, and coordinating all the people involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do at the ACLU of Colorado is we team with cooperating counsel, and it allows us to sort of act as a full force multiplier and do more of the civil rights and civil liberties work that needs to be done. We have a small but mighty staff, and so we rely on cooperating counsel. And in the protester case, I was on the other side, so I was one of the cooperating counsel at my firm, Arnold & Porter, at the time, and we had more than 70 lawyers and staff from across the country who were so outraged at what was happening in our communities and in our country, and the racial injustice and violence, that they joined. They really wanted to find a purpose and a meaning, and so we had an incredible team of people that worked on that case, put in thousands and thousands of hours of reviewing videos from halo cams and body cams and helicopter cams to put together a compelling story that what happened to the citizens of Denver was wrong, was unconstitutional, and the Denver Police Department needed to make a change. So the team that we put together was just outstanding, and I was honored to be a part of it and honored to represent our clients because they were the ones putting their lives and themselves on the line for change. And I know that our entire team felt that way. It was certainly a professional highlight for me and our entire team.
And Tim, remind us of the verdict of that case.
So we got a verdict of $14 million on behalf of 12 individuals by the time of trial. So we were pleased with that, but what we really wanted and still want is to make sure that nothing like that happens again, and to promote and ask for and demand change in police accountability and police reform. So that's what really mattered to our clients and certainly matters to our organization.
Thank you for that. And so, Tim, you talked about your background. We hear about some actual cases, particular case and involvement you've done with ACLU. What really motivates you to do this work? You could have been a different type of attorney, but you chose this path.
Well, it's funny because I ask myself why everyone doesn't want to do it. As I said to our clients every day as we got ready for trial, it's an honor, it's a privilege to work on systemic change and to represent folks who have been marginalized, have been abused, who haven't had the opportunities that I have. And so to me, I think it's a responsibility that I feel personally to work towards a more just, a more equitable society and community. Frankly, it feels good. It's important work. So that's why I do it.
Well, we all honored that you're doing it with us. You know, as you know, in the audience, some of you may know this, that we just completed a 3-year strategic roadmap that we call the Road Ahead. That's going to be our guiding light for how we do our work and how we're going to focus our resources and our strategies. An important part of that is always litigation. And so we have these 3 pillars of our roadmap: smart justice, systemic equality, and privacy and liberty. Tim, how are you going to weave these strategies into the work of the legal department going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the 3 issue areas that the ACLU of Colorado has laid out in the strategic plan, which I love the name, the road ahead, because the road ahead of us is it may be arduous, but it's a journey that hopefully will folks on this call and others will join us in. But so the 3 issue areas, we've got smart justice, as you said, systemic equality, and privacy and liberty. And so under each of those buckets, under smart justice, the kinds of cases we're thinking about, the kind of issues that we're contemplating under smart justice, of course, include police accountability and excessive force, like we did in the protester case. So that's one element of smart justice that we're continuing to think about. Another is Fourth Amendment search and seizure cases. So they're historically dating all the way back to the ACLU of Colorado spy files case way back when, that uncovered sort of spying by Denver police on citizens, activist groups, and others. We're really focused on making sure that our government authorities comply with the Fourth Amendment, and what we're seeing as part of our investigations, maybe that sometimes we have overzealous police departments that don't abide by the Fourth Amendment, that have quite broad search and seizure. So those are another area of cases that we're looking at under smart justice. And a third is criminal law reform, thinking about what are ways in which we can reform the criminal justice system and the laws that are locking people up for extremely long periods of time. So those are the buckets under smart justice that we are thinking about. Under systemic equality, again, it's a fairly broad umbrella, but one of the areas that we're currently litigating, as well as investigating cases, is in housing and the criminalization of the unhoused. And so we're seeing across both our state and more broadly significant attacks on people and restrictions on people and criminalization of folks that don't have the economic means to be in a home or otherwise have shelter. And so that's definitely a focus. Voting rights is another. Obviously, without broad access to the ballot and fair voting procedures, we don't have a functioning democracy. And obviously that's at the national level. We've certainly seen that, and lots of states have imposed pretty draconian voting restrictions, often targeted at Black and brown communities. Fortunately, in Colorado, we so far haven't seen that significantly at the statewide level, but we're certainly paying attention to it at local levels to ensure that folks have access to the ballot box as a fundamental right. 2 other areas under the systemic equality would be thinking about immigrants' rights. So we're litigating some cases and interested in some of the government at the federal and the local county level that are imposing restrictions on immigrants. And so that's an area under systemic equality, as well as sort of broadly racial justice matters of discrimination and racial abuse. So that's sort of our umbrella under the systemic equality. And then third is the privacy and liberty. Here we have areas of reproductive rights that obviously with the United States Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs overturning the right to reproductive health care for women across our country at a federal level as a constitutional right, we're keenly focused on what we can do as an organization to protect those rights across the state of Colorado. We're seeing some efforts at county levels to restrict reproductive rights and healthcare, and obviously we'll continue to watch that closely. We're seeing some activity by out-of-state anti-choice activists filing complaints and otherwise seeking to restrict the licenses of doctors here in Colorado who may be dual licensed in other states. And so we're representing some folks on that fight. Another under the privacy and liberty banner, we're keenly focused on LGBTQ rights under attack across the country. Obviously, we see that in the news in lots of anti-trans bills in lots of states. And here, we're not seeing that at the state level, but we are seeing it at the county level. We're seeing it at school boards engaging in anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans actions. So we've got several matters that we are handling and will be looking to expand on. And then last, under what I see as a privacy and liberty banner, is digital privacy. And we're seeing a very intrusive actions eroding our digital privacy, both from the government side as well as the business side. And so I think that's another area where we will be focused going forward.
That's a big agenda, but it's certainly during these times it calls for us to be bold and take on these agendas and hold the line. Absolutely. For those of you with us, please feel free to put any questions or comments in our chat box, and I will make sure that Tim answers them and addresses them. So please do that as we continue this conversation. One of the questions that I have is, how do you plan to advocate for communities that you don't identify with? You know, that was, here you are, a white male with a terminal degree, had lots of opportunities, but you have consistently been an advocate for other communities. But tell me, how do you do that? And how do you do that authentically? And how are you going to move that into this role?
Yeah, you know, I think it's super important that we begin by listening to community, to sort of being a part of our communities. And so to me, it's the way I've tried to approach my practice for the last 25 years, which is to listen, to collaborate, and then work together with the folks that we represent. I don't think that, you know, we always, or I certainly don't have all the answers, but being an active partner with the folks who have the lived experience, who are suffering the trauma, and be guided in large part by those community conversations. I think that's what we did in the protester case, and listening to our clients at the outset and said, what do you hope to accomplish in this case? And we ended up coming up with a list of 34 changes to the police department from the lived experience of our clients, who had, many of whom had been working on police reform before they went to the protests and suffered the indignities that they suffered. So I think that's really the way I've tried to approach every case and every client that I've ever worked on. And it's certainly part of the values of the ACLU of Colorado.
You know, Tim, one of the things I observed about you, even before you came to be a part of our team, is that you partner with a number of different organizations and you have these ongoing working relationships with them. You give some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of my work over the years, I was on the board and the chair of the board of the Colorado Lawyers Committee, which is a part of the umbrella Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And so I handled a number of civil rights cases in conjunction and in community with the Colorado Lawyers Committee. I served on the board of the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless right when I got to Denver 25 years ago, and have done a substantial amount of advocacy for the unhoused. I have done a lot of work over the years with the Hopi people down in Northeast Arizona. Spent a lot of time down in Hopi doing cases for them. Did a substantial amount of work with the Mi Casa Resources Center for Women and Centro San Juan Diego, where we started a couple of legal night clinics for folks who couldn't pay for representation. And I think over about 15 years, we served 15 to 20,000 people. So through those organizations. So those are some of the organizations that I have partnered with over the course of my career.
And you've also, in a short period of time, has found a number of amicus briefs with some of those partners organizations, correct?
Yeah, and it's one of the aspects that I would like to sort of increase our amicus participation. And I don't know how many non-lawyers we have on the Zoom today, but amicus briefs. Amicus is just a fancy word for saying friend of the court, an amicus curiae brief, and it gives us an opportunity as an organization to weigh in on issues of civil rights and civil liberties across the community. And ACLU has always done amicus briefs. I have a particular interest, and I think it's important. It helps us join in community with other organizations and show support for their issues, the issues that they have going before the court. And so my hope is, and my call for folks out there is to come to us when you hear of cases that are either at the federal 10th Circuit or the Colorado Supreme Court or the Colorado Court of Appeals that you think raise civil rights and civil liberties issues. Just in the time that I have been here, we've filed three amicus briefs just in the last 10 days. We've got 2 more that we're working on right now, and so we're open for amicus business, and we want to expand that even more here over the coming years.
Thank you. Tim, we have a couple of questions in the chat box. One from Susan Gilbert. Susan was saying that she's very concerned about what she's seeing happening in Colorado with the influx of immigrants into our community. And so what role do you see the ACLU could have in this particular crisis that we're currently in?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we have been paying attention to the governmental response or lack of response with respect to our immigrant communities, and I'm meeting with some of the folks from the Rocky Mountain Immigrant Advocacy Network here in a few days. I've been talking with them about what they see, talking to the people of the Colorado Immigrants' Rights Coalition just last week. And I think we have to make sure we're holding our governments accountable for the way in which they treat the our immigrant brothers and sisters who are here struggling. And obviously Denver just announced a new policy which we're investigating about who can and cannot access shelter. And so we have a pending case at the Colorado Court of Appeals challenging Teller County's use and partnership with ICE in a way that violates federal law. At least our view is it violates federal law, where ICE essentially doesn't get a warrant to hold someone after they've served their sentence, but sends a request that a Colorado county or sheriff, in that instance Teller County, continue to hold someone in jail even after they no longer have a right to do so under state law. We think that they can't do that. We filed a lawsuit a few years ago, went to trial a few months ago, and that case is now up on appeal, and hopefully will have an impact that prevents Colorado counties from essentially acting as semi-deputized ICE agents and holding people in jail even after their warrants or their time under state law is expired and they can't be held any longer. So that's some of what we're doing on the immigrant rights front.
Okay, thank you. Tom Snyder is asking, can NGOs help in gathering data and partnering on cases? And they gave specifically like an example with the Colorado Poverty Law Project.
Yeah, absolutely. A shout out to the Colorado Poverty Law Project. They're doing great work. And the answer is absolutely. So we partner with folks all the time who are doing Open Records Act requests or gathering data on things that are happening in our community that we need to step in. And so we're absolutely looking forward and delighted to partner with any NGO that is out there that has boots on the ground, that has folks that are experiencing government or other harm that we can address.
And it certainly goes throughout the state of Colorado. I know that, for instance, you're in conversations and partnerships with a particular group in Colorado Springs. So statewide, we have that opportunity to partner.
That's absolutely right. And so, yeah, we're working with groups in Colorado Springs to investigate some of the infiltration of the racial justice movement and protests that the Colorado Springs Police Department engaged in. We're working in community with folks down in Durango because of the actions that the government down there is engaged in with respect to the unhoused population. We got a request a few days ago that we're investigating with respect to some actions on a shelter up in Fort Collins. And so, yeah, gathering data and coordinating and cooperating with us is absolutely what we're here for.
Ann Murdoch asks, and this is a great question, Ann. Tim, how many requests for legal assistance do we receive each year? And out of that number, how many are we really able to handle?
So yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them we get every year. They roll in every single day. I looked at the mail yesterday and there was a stack, this high of letters. And that was just the letters that rolled in, because most folks now contact us. Most folks contact us through the website. And so we do still get I'm a little old fashioned and old school. So I like the letters, although they depress me about some of our government's activities across the state. But we get both hard copy letters and we get electronic, and we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. With respect to the number of cases that we can take, it's a small number. We are hoping to get, we're expanding our staff. We're hoping to hire 2 to 3 more lawyers here in the next 3 to 6 months, which will allow us to do more. And I think as the new guy, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm told that last year we were in the 2,000 to 3,000 range in terms of requests.
Great. Well, you're definitely making the case why we need more attorneys here to address the needs that are evident out there. Our partner, Jeremy Shaver with ADL, Tim, wants to know if we signed on to the amicus brief in the 303 creative case, and any thoughts on how ACLU Colorado will respond depending on the SCOTUS decision.
Yeah, so yes, we did sign on we had an amicus brief in the 303 creative case.
And Tim, will you stop and tell us non-lawyers what that is?
Yeah, so the 303 creative case was a website designer developer who refused. It was really sort of a setup case where they claimed that they would not do certain websites for LGBTQ folks, and that somehow the Colorado law that requires them to provide open access to all citizens violated their religious rights. And so that was the framing of the case at the United States Supreme Court. Oral argument was a few months ago, and we're awaiting decision. So I won't comment on how we'll respond depending on the decision. We'll obviously the United States Supreme Court has been a relatively hostile environment for civil rights and civil liberties in the view of many over the last few years. It's why nationally and here in Colorado, the organization is embarking on something called the State Court Initiative, where our organization and affiliates across the country are looking at state court remedies and the state constitution, because our state constitution is not necessarily have the same provisions as the federal constitution, and even where the provisions are similar, our state Supreme Court has its own obligation to interpret the rights and responsibilities under the state constitution. And so I think over the coming decade, you will likely see more cases in the state courts and seeking the views of our state Supreme Court on civil rights and civil liberties issues for that reason.
Thank you. Regina Jackson has an interesting question going back to police brutality and what happens within the culture, within the police culture. And her question is, because the unions are the protector of the culture and what happens in terms when we have police who are bad actors, her question is it reasonable to think that requiring police unions to be financially responsible for lawsuits? Is it reasonable to think that they would be required to be financially responsible for lawsuits?
Yeah, it's a great question, Regina. One of the things from our protester case, which was most disappointing, was that even after all of the police violence that we showed to the jury and to the judge, which was, our trial lasted 3 weeks, and I showed you all just a very, very small snippet of what happened to a few of the individuals, but we had literally hundreds and hundreds of incidents of police violence to people with their hands raised, shot with pepper bullets, sprayed with chemical sprays, tear gassed, and on and on. And the police union defended every single one of the incidents, wouldn't acknowledge not one incident as being even outside a policy, let alone an unconstitutional act committed by those officers. And that was extremely disappointing. We had an expert witness who had been a longtime police chief who described it as some of the most awful behavior and unconstitutional behavior that he had seen in his 40 or 50-year career. So it's a long-winded way of saying we need to have some kind of reform. And the police union ought to be a part of that. There are a lot of people across the country thinking about whether it's changes to municipal ordinances, changes to state law, and that's certainly something that we as an organization are thinking about as part of the road home, the road ahead, which maybe will bring us home.
Yes.
As part of the road ahead strategic platform, we have adopted a integrated advocacy model, and so we are working in partnership and community with our organizers, with our advocacy team, to try to approach these problems from a holistic viewpoint and not just litigate. Some of us litigators, always we have a hammer, and so everything is a nail. But as an organization, we recognize that in order to make lasting systemic change, litigation can be a tool in the tool basket, but we need to do it in conjunction and in community with organizing and advocacy and making alliances with our community partners. And so the way to accomplish police reform is to sort of do all of those things together. And that's certainly what we're doing as an organization.
Tim, is there some point that in answering these questions, something that came up for you that you would like to address?
Yeah, so a little bit. Some of the, I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done so that folks, the folks out there can be thinking. I talked a little bit about in the last 10 days, we filed 3 amicus briefs, and I'll just describe a little bit to give people the flavor of those amicus briefs. So when they go back to their community, they're thinking about how can the ACLU partner with us. So one of the cases is in what we call a Bivens action, and Bivens is named after the United States Supreme Court case from many years ago that recognized a cause of action that someone who was subject to excessive force by federal officers could sue under the Fourth Amendment, and we call that a Bivens action. People under state who are state officials or local officials who commit constitutional violations can be sued under a statute called 1983. But federal officers, people acting under federal law, are subject to these what we call Bivens claims. And what has happened is the Bivens claims have been narrowed by the United States Supreme Court, and we're at risk of losing the ability to hold federal officers who commit constitutional violations responsible for those. And it would be I think a terrible outcome for our citizenry, because what it means is if a federal officer, whatever stripe, commits a constitutional violation against you or your community, you don't have a remedy. And so we have filed a brief in the 10th Circuit a few days ago trying to hold back the tide, and that's on behalf of someone. U.S. Marshals came to the home to exercise a warrant, and as alleged, kicked and beat on the man for several minutes. He filed an excessive force claim, and the court dismissed it. He said, "Well, this is different, and we're not going to even recognize that someone subject to a beating by federal U.S. Marshals can claim a constitutional violation. There's no remedy for that." That's what the district court said. And so we have filed a brief in that case saying, hold on, this can't be the law. It's not the law. You need to recognize a Bivens claim in this circumstance. Another case we filed an amicus brief about 10 days ago was in a case of a juror, a potential juror up in Gilpin County who expressed openly racist views. And then when they were subject to a cause challenge by the defense lawyer, it was a case involving an African-American man accused of an assault of a white woman. And when the potential juror expressed racist views, the judge denied a cause challenge, refused to remove the juror from the potential venire. And even though the Court of Appeals found that that was an error, that it was erroneous to not dismiss that potential juror who openly expressed racist views, they upheld it as being permissible because it was, in essence, what they deemed was harmless error. And so that's a case at the Colorado Supreme Court, and in partnership with the NAACP, we filed an amicus brief a couple of weeks ago, urging the court to hold the line and say it is an offense to the administration of justice to not condemn that type of racism in the courtroom. There's no place in the courtroom for racist beliefs and expressions, and so we hope that the Colorado Supreme Court will reverse the Court of Appeals decision. So those are at least a handful of the types of cases that we filed amicus briefs in lately.
Well, thank you for giving those examples of ways that you're using the strategy in terms of lifting up the needs and the concerns, but also being connected directly to our strategic roadmap so that we can begin to use all of the tools that we have in our toolbox to move our agenda forward. Tim, tell us what you're thinking about in terms, we hear how you're going to be hiring new attorneys and increase your capacity. We heard the strategy around the amicus briefs. Tell us what we can expect from your leadership in the next 6 months, year going forward.
Yeah, I hope to be out in community and listening to folks and making sure that we're responsive to the community needs, whether that's in advocating for racial justice, whether it's advocating for immigrant justice, whether it's advocating for indigenous justice, whether it's a First Amendment, a Fourth Amendment issues. I want to make sure that we are out in community and having as broad an impact as we possibly can to defend civil rights and civil liberties across the state. So I want to expand our stable of cooperating counsel. I think there are young and not so young lawyers out there who are clamoring to make a difference, that want to have an impact on their community and do some righteous work. It's why a lot of us went to law school, and then at some point maybe we lose our way a little bit, and they can find their way back through partnership with us and many of our community organizations that are out there. And so I want to have an open door to our community, and not just the legal community, but of course including the legal community, so that they can help us expand the work that we're doing.
Tim, one of the things you and I both have talked about is perhaps the most important work that we can do now to continue the legacy and the work of ACLU of Colorado is to inspire that next generation of change agents, and whether through advocacy or through becoming an attorney or whatever. So yeah, I've seen evidence of how you've done that throughout your career. So I'm glad to hear that's part of your agenda as you move forward in this new road. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, every time, I have 3 kids of my own, but every time I'm out talking to middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students, law students, young lawyers, young leaders in our community, the question that I hear from folks is, what can I do? How can I have an impact? I think now I've got a real easy answer of saying, the ACLU of Colorado stands ready, willing and able to engage in those conversations, to be a thought partner with our nonprofits like the Colorado Poverty Law Center and many, many, many others in our community out there doing the work, rolling their sleeves up every day. And so I think we've got lots of opportunities to stand together, to bring in young and old folks alike, ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with us.
Thank you, Tim. It's an honor for me to be in partnership with you in this work. Looking forward to the great things that you will do and that we will certainly do as an affiliate. Lisa, you have just, Lisa Hills put a wonderful quote in the chat that I would like to read. And she said, she's so grateful, Tim, for your service to the community. ACLU Colorado is so blessed to have you. Thank you. And Lisa, I echo that. We're very fortunate that Tim decided that at this point in his life, he was going to bring all his tools and expertise to continue to advance civil liberties and protect civil rights for all Coloradans. Thank each of you for joining us this afternoon. It's great to be in conversation with you, our partners, and our supporters throughout the years. We have such a strong base of support in Colorado, and it's because of good people like you who have stood with us throughout the 70-year history that our pledge to you that we will continue to do the hard work, the important work, and ensure that absolutely Colorado is the most equitable state in our country. Thank you for joining us. Have a good afternoon, and we hope to see you on another conversation soon.
And Deborah, can I make one last plea?
You sure may.
All right. And so as Deborah said, our strategic vision is called The Road Ahead. And so I want to invite all of you who've taken your time today, and I know there's so many folks out there doing great work in the community. And as we think about the road ahead, we think about smart justice, about systemic equality and privacy and liberty. I want you to think about joining us as cooperating counsel, joining us as a community partner. Join us at the Capitol. Join us at the city municipal buildings. Join our advocacy team. Join our organizing team, and invite us to join you for the road ahead. Because together is how we can make Colorado a better, a more equitable place. Join us with your dollars if you can. And we look forward to being in solidarity with you on the road ahead to a more just and equitable Colorado. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks everyone for being with us this afternoon. Have a good rest of the day, and we look forward to being in conversation with you soon.